confirmed. Frag confirmed. Frag confirmed. Base is under attack. Double frag. Frag confirmed. Order confirmed. Frag confirmed. Base is under attack. Base is under attack. Frag confirmed. Order confirmed. Frag confirmed. Double frag. Order confirmed. Frag confirmed. Frag confirmed. Order confirmed. Frag catch. Ultra frag. Monster frag. Base is under attack. Order confirmed. Double frag. Triple frag. Order confirmed. Frag confirmed.
clarity.
Yumi's arm is gumming up the machine! And it's hilarious! Oh, that tickles me. So gross!
I couldn't get enough of them unintentionally trolling the tattoo parlor, though I did feel bad for that spider wasting his valuable time only to get his tools all gummed up. So back to talking about our lovable and relatable depressed normie Simon Petrikov. Well, he's at least relatable to anyone who's had to figure out what to do with their life after investing a lot of time in a direction that stops being feasible. Simon's main crisis is one of shedding past identities and having no new ones to fill the gaps with. Something that can cut surprisingly deep at your mental well-being. Simon has a few friends and even loved ones, but he has not been open about his feelings and thoughts to them up to this episode.
Everything's fine. I'm all set.
Simon doesn't feel like he has a community or a place he truly belongs. Simon doesn't feel at home in the land of Ooh. The magical world has become mundane and maddening. Having only cheers on TV while living in a human zoo will do that to a fellow. Hell, if I had to have those grateful and such signs in my home, I'd also want to perform an evil ritual. For people with depression, merely existing often feels like a job. It can be hard to find energy and focus to do simple chores. For Simon, doing household chores is literally his job. The dude has to put on a facade of living a so-called normal life in the 20th century, while he desires to have an actual life that he could consider normal by his 20th century standards, which was in contrast to Fiona's wish for her life to be more magical. I really liked how this aspect of Simon's day-to-day life was portrayed, even though I felt really bad that the guy couldn't find a way to incorporate his antiquarian job of old with the modern active. It's interesting that Fiona's routine is actually synced up with Simon's between the two episodes. They both awake to cheers, go to work where they're expected to put on a mask for the sake of others, get a drink and chat with friends, and then go into a forest where a friend fails to help them with their problem. Fiona and Simon are obviously thematically linked in their depression, but the structures of the respective episodes also mirror each other, which was neat. So, back in part 1 of my Together Again review, I had mused about missing the Ice King in the continuations of Adventure Time. I can't help but miss the wacky antics of that deranged magical troublemaker. I guess I'm not the only one who was missing the Ice King's mischief. There are dozens of us.
He used to be a really cool ice wizard. My favorite book series. His girlfriend or fiance or something.
You know what? Good on you for making that kid cry, Simon. At least I never liked the Ice King for his fanfictions. Turns out pretty much everybody else did, though. Simon's melancholy is that of artists growing beyond their own work. Simon wishes to have no association with his past creative output as Ice King, but that work is already out there, and Simon can't erase the cultural footprint it's left behind. It seems like residents of Ooh who recognize Simon associate him with Fiona and Kate first and foremost, and secondarily as the former Ice King with his current identity, or lack thereof, falling to the wayside. But it turns out that the person who misses Ice King the most might just be Simon himself.
Sometimes I used to dress up like Ice King. After I became me again, I guess I missed being him in a way.
Simon misses that naive and magical stupor. While the Ice King was often sad and miserable, there definitely was an element of ignorance is bliss to Ice King's personality, and he often quickly bounced back from setbacks or just forgot about them.
Why? 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 Oh well. Gunter, dispose of Finn's carcass.
I've featured the following joke multiple times in my previous videos because I found it so humorous.
What? This is how I cope!
But this joke does take on a far more somber layer of context, now that we see how much conflict and pain is behind Simon's compulsion to slip back into the blue moo-moo. In the episode Betty, Simon had said the following.
I don't want to be the Ice King again. It's like living with eternal diaper butt. I can't do it.
I guess the grass was greener on the other side, because now Simon thinks Diaper Butt may have sometimes been worth it to not be aware of all that he has lost. The following is another scene from Betty that might now have new context.
You're gonna be the Ice King till the sun blows up. This is your one chance.
Maybe Old Death wasn't wrong in his claim, but rather he was talking in a metaphorical sense. This internal conflict Simon finds himself struggling with is brilliantly captured by Rebecca Sugar's song, Heart of the Madness. It's a forlorn, catchy melody that captures the loneliness and isolation Simon has been feeling for years. Another great song under Adventure Time's belt. Alright, I've featured him in the review already, but I haven't said his name yet, so let's finally talk about none other than Choose Goose! I'm kidding around, but it was such a blast to spot evil Choose Goose, who survived at the Icor of Tokentepe in the Distant Land Special Wizard City. It was neat to spot him before Simon actually pulled the sheet off his cage, and I love the development that his rhyming trash mouth is the reason Fiona and Kate could get injected into Simon's ritual. But yes, let's finally talk about Finn Motherfucking Burns. You know how it's stereotypical advice to work out when you're depressed or when you experience grief? Finn took that to fucking heart at some point after Jake's death. Dude got jacked! I'd claim my boy was on steroids if this wasn't a magical cartoon universe, and if Finn wasn't willing to get stuck in non-stop loops of grinding dungeons and hating when his emotional state is less than stable. I love how Finn seems to be taking each of Jake's kids on adventures with him after the death of his brother, though I feel like his rationale for doing so is due to the fear that his nieces and nephews might die before he ever gets around to spending quality time with them, but it's still just so many fun potential dynamics to think about. I'm amazed TV ever agreed to it, honestly, but older TV seems a lot more chill than before. Finn comes off as getting by on the surface, but he's a tad rough underneath. Obviously, he's got trauma, or perhaps even PTSD, at the core of his being, despite him trying to keep up a cheerful and carefree exterior and live the best life that he can. I'd say the gun-ho, go-go-go attitude is one of the ways he's dealing with suppressing his grief about Jake's passing, but this probably ain't healthy for Finn. I mean, come on, it definitely ain't healthy, and it is definitely not helping Simon. Yeah, Finn gives Simon some terrible advice in this episode.
Talking about sad stuff gets you nowhere. Forget about it.
And he gives himself terrible advice too. Finn also retains his subtle jerk-ass component into adulthood. He seems Simon to lure out a monster without even telling the guy.
Good job, mate. You better yet?
Unsurprisingly, all the Triple Force accomplished was to push Simon further away.
It'll take you back.
Yeah. Where I want to be.
I mean, it also got Simon pretty badly injured. Violence was interesting because it didn't feel that extreme or shocking to me, but it was still something Adventure Time couldn't get away with before. So it was fine, but also felt kind of unnecessary to me. Even in Season 1, Adventure Time was already achieving comparable levels of violence in how it depicted bruising, for example. So I don't need the blood, but I also don't mind. I'll say this, the level of violence was substantially below that of Infinity Train, which was rated TV-PG compared to TV-14 for Fiona and Cake. Find ways to watch Infinity Train, y'all, because it's great. And it was built from HBO Max due to a corporate merger that placed new idiotic executives at the helm. Go watch Infinity Train. Getting back to Adventure Time though, I simply want to stress that I absolutely loved the camping trip Finn and Simon took, and the dynamic the two share, even though it's not exactly healthy for either. I adored the callbacks to the Hall of Egress, with Finn blindfolding both himself and Simon so that fate can take them where it will, I guess. Dude is taking the lesson he learned way back when far too literally, but it was hilarious. And of course, Finn confirming that he spends time with Huntress Wizard was also great. The whole episode was friggin' great. I could keep on gushing about this episode and finding topics and details to discuss ad infinitum, but then this video would never get released. So I'm gonna have to end things here, folks. The episode Simon Petrikov was such a spectacular way to follow up on the fantastic first episode, and I'm so glad that even way after the main series had concluded, Adventure Time continues to blow me away. The next two episodes are on the horizon, and I hope you join me when I review them. Catch ya on the flip. The episode Cake the Cat begins with Prismo looking worse for wear over Jake's death. Perhaps also suffering from depression, as the dude is ignoring his hygiene and his job. Prismo is replaying reality clips of Jake and Finn's adventures while the shape-shifting dog is still alive. I guess it's technically possible this is a live stream of a similar dimension where Jake lives and Finn has the exact same chest tattoo, and in such a case, that would mean Prismo had not befriended any such congruent Jake, because it would be too weird to hang out with a simulacrum of his beloved friend who isn't actually that beloved friend. I think it's way safer to assume Prismo is watching old footage of Prime Jake, though, and that would make far more sense as a coping mechanism to deal with grief than peeping on a similar dimension. Finn's chest tattoo in this clip refutes some previous speculation that I've done. I had thought that Finn Merton's got his brother's face tattooed on his chest to honor Jake's death, but it seems some other event prompted Finn to ink his pets before Jake died. Finn must have died, so maybe it was one of the campaign's decisions. Speaking of the Jake has nipples now, which I don't recall it ever did before. Jokes aside, it was awesome to see the Jake suit as I'm a big fan of that form. I actually drew some fan art of it many years ago. So upon watching the cold open for the first time, I was a little puzzled as to why the title card Cake the Cat was preceded by Prismo watching Jake. But it does make narrative sense in hindsight. Finn's love for Jake is meant to be likened to Fiona's love for Cake, and this parallel is part of what makes Prismo decide to help Fiona and Cake in episode 4 rather than allow them to be incinerated. So while the transition to the title card is more jarring than in the previous episodes, it makes more sense in the context of the following episode. After being goody-goodied to the land of Ooh, Cake behaves like a cat in a new location and lets all those anxieties loose about things being different than they were, and it's very amusing and highly accurate to real-life felines. Then again, that great-faced Fiona lookalike would probably spook a human in Cake's place, too. The detail in the streets of the human city that I'm sure made the eyes of many other viewers widen was seeing a Minerva bot. We did see Finn's mom at the end of the on the ships that were arriving to Ooh. It's nice to get confirmation that she can actually control the Minerva bots from across the world. I assume the body of Minerva and the computer systems that maintain their mainframe brain interface remains on Founder's Island. If the population of the human city outgrows the number of humans on the islands, I could maybe see a reason for Minerva to try and relocate her body and an operating system, but I think living all those components crossing such a vast distance is too big a risk for her to ever attempt, assuming such a relocation is even possible. The human city floating high in the air above the land of Ooh might be to isolate the humans from the magical dangers and monsters that might dwell below, but I think it's also possible the city is elevated to make establishing a satellite connection, or whatever kind of uplink it is, to Founder's Island easier, thus allowing uninterrupted interfacing with the Minerva bots across the ocean. Including a Minerva bot was a really fun detail, and I could not help but think of the kinds of conversations Finn might have had with his mom over the years. So back to Cake the Cat, she leaps off the human city by mistake and survives with some help from the tree canopy cushioning her fall. This is actually not as far-fetched or cartoony as it seems, since cats are expert fallers, and some lucky felines have been documented to survive falls off of skyscrapers with only minor injuries. Cats are actually more likely to survive a really high fall, around 30 meters and up, than a fall from half that height. As Cake becomes more acclimated to the niceties of Ooh, she reacquires her urge to kill! I wonder if the ice thing hadn't coincidentally flown over Cake, would she have myrtled that squirrel? By the way, if you had asked me which minor character was going to get like a third of an episode dedicated to them in the Fiona and Cake series, I would not have said that squirrel from the season 5 episode of the tree. In the current time, 12 years after the finale of Along With Me, the squirrel is profiting off the same cursed apples he forced her in way back in the day. Apparently some dude just told him he's a merchant.
Literally, some Apple guy actually came up to me and said, this will be your life now, and it will be a high.
Something else that I would have never saw coming was the voice that we all associate with Cake actually being from the voice setting for cats on the vocal translator caller. That whole shtick was pretty dang funny, as was Cake changing sizes not due to her inherent magic, but rather the size-altering fruits at the market that the squirrel learned. That was a fun little play on the intermediary between magical Cake and non-magical Cake. Fiona's roommate intends to continue on to the Ice King's place of residence from the market, much to the chagrin of the squirrel.
Dang it, why can't I make friends?
Even in the magical land of Ooh, it's hard to make friends because of the commitment to your job. Eesh. It never actually leaves the market though. She gets a musical number where she demonstrates that when you let a cat outside, it's gonna tear up the local ecosystem. And for that, she gets placed in the stocks that we saw when we first arrived at the market. One detail that should have extremely important ramifications for the future is that Cake turned Hot Dog Night number 7 into a regular old, non-magical hot dog. Is this an ability that's going to potentially mess with the fabric of reality? Are Fiona and Cake even going to be able to control this power to defend themselves with it as they hop across dimensions? And to ponder on episode 4 a little bit, if Simon actually does become the Ice King, could this power be what reverts him back to Pathfinder? I can't wait to find out. Getting back to Fiona, I have to mention that scene with the wine in the brown bag because it made me chortle really hard, and that was something Adventure Time could definitely not get away with before. Anyway, Fiona finally realizes that ice is the catalyst that leads to the formation of a portal between worlds, and she fully coolies right out of the back of Simon's noggin once he restarts the ritual. Simon's freak out afterward was a hoot. Upon her arrival in Ooh, Fiona gets a fried evil goose to the face. What a welcome from a fist outside. The person who helps Fiona reunite with her roommate is the little girl from episode 2 named Astrid. I didn't think she was going to reappear again, and the fact that we learn her name makes me think this might not be the last we see her. In my intro breakdown video, I thought this short person running might be Babby Finn, or just Young Finn, but a lot of people left comments that they thought this person was actually Astrid. I had dismissed the possibility because the ears are a Finn's hat, and not the rabbit variety like Astrid's ever had, which she did to the other. But I guess this could potentially be Astrid if she does somehow end up wearing a Finn-like hat for some reason. The episode concludes with Fiona beating up all the peeps at the market with a flagpole. She even knocks out children that weren't doing anything.
Fiona, behind you!
And after that beatdown, Prismo beams the both of them up into the time room. I enjoyed this episode, but it definitely lacks the feeling of your socks being blown off, which episodes 1, 2, and 4 packed plenty of. This was mostly one of those in-between episodes that connects and paves the way for future developments, but a lot of screen time was also spent on taking the squirrel doing hijinks, and these are plenty fun, but they pale in comparison to all the exciting developments that occurred before and after. I don't want to go as far as saying some of the Cake and Squirrel stuff felt like a flop. It's just that on a relative scale, it's hard enough to have this episode come off as a tad lackluster when it's surrounded by such friggin' amazing episodes. If you missed my reviews of the amazing episode 1 and 2, go check those out, and I hope you join me in my review of the next episode, Prismo the Wishmaster. See you then. So it was Prismo. Prismo wrote some accidental fanfiction based on the existing Land of Ooh we're familiar with, a reality he had more than a fair bit of low-key affection for, and Prismo beamed those stories that were technically as real as any other universe right into Ice King's noggin for years. Prismo, what the hell, man? How many Australian beers were you drinking? But let's back up. The episode Prismo the Wishmaster begins in the Drift, a setting in the depths of space that appeared in the first Distant Land special titled Emo. The place looks fairly similar to how it did around 20 years ago, at least run by Earth time. There's some new apartment expansions and some architecture that looks more worn down than before, but the Drift has really held up for the most part, considering that it used to be on the brink of catastrophe. The palm tree in the island sphere has grown and even has a treehouse now. One of the jump-pit spheres has become jam-packed with scrap, and this makes sense as the denizens had to reverse engineer the Drift to be a sustainable place of habitation, which included decommissioning some areas. Relative to before, a lot of biospheres are no longer lit, and I think it's safe to assume those are currently non-functional to preserve resources. The Drift doesn't really matter for the purposes of this episode, though, as it's just a place where we get acquainted with a brand new character, the work-oriented Scarab, who has the title of God Auditor. Besides keeping gods in line, he appears to take pride in hunting down various cosmic criminals, ranging from deadbeat jerkasses to actual deities, and he can turn them into cute Tamagotchi-like eggs with his transformation. Upon his initial appearance, I had assumed Scarab would be part of a cosmic crime patrol related to the Citadel, but old Scrappy turned out to be a league above those chumps, as the Tamagotchi-fied criminals in his collection are due to be incinerated from existence rather than imprisoned.
And after that, into the incinerator with the rest of the trash.
I would assume this behavior and being wanted for questioning wouldn't be worthy of annihilation, but Scarab did scroll past those profiles, so I got the impression Scrappy prefers to target egregious offenders doomed to incineration over those that are to be turned over to other celestial authorities. Unless Scarab holds a personal grudge, of course, because this vindictive grasshopper-legged red chud thinks that he should have been the Wishmaster rather than Prismo, and takes the utmost glee in the possibility of bringing Prismo down. Some fun little details in the cold open were that the Voidcaster who helped Martin Mertens escape the Citadel had already gotten caught, but it seems like the database Scarab utilizes lacks the intel that Finn's dad discorporated into a new mode of existence. I'm amazed Martin was allowed to do a double middle finger for his mugshot. Maybe the aliens processing him weren't familiar with the gesture? Fiona flipped Queenie off British style in the first episode of this series, but here's Martin from the Paston universe, really putting that TV-14 rating to work. Wyatt also helped with that a little bit. The reality construct of Wyatt's Wish was a real misstep, referencing silent cartoons from the early 20th century. That whole sequence gets my personal vote for the funniest bit of the episode. No, wait, that was Simon's ass, actually? Turns out the cake in Fiona and Cake was not referring to the cat. Dude's got cheeks for days. But back on topic, while everyone does hate Wyatt, I nonetheless got an impression that Prismo ran out of fucks to give about how the wishes he grants turn out. Which further supports that the pink guy is in a depressive slump, and is finding little meaning in his work, a condition shared with the rest of his playmates, aside from maybe Kate, I guess. There were some fun details when Prismo was locating the crossovers in Ooh. Peppermint Butler and Blaine from the Distant Land Special Wizard City are totally dating now. Good for them. A Mountain also wrote a popular book, and Susan and Frida are still off having adventures. I know they were already adults before the original series ended, but those two haven't changed one bit in 12 years. Before I proceed with further discussion, I should mention that Prismo did get a new voice actor. Kumail Nanjiani would have been happy to return, but his agent done goofed and declined the role without forwarding the info at all. That's really unfortunate, though I will say the new voice actor Sean Rohan did a fine job, and my immersion was never broken, even though you can hear the subtle differences in the voice if you listen closely enough. So back to the episode, Prismo is the one who bestows Cake with a propensity for bipedality and grants her the use of opposable thumbs. On first reaction, I thought this was way too sudden of a manner for Cake to regain her stretchy powers, literally from Prismo snapping his fingers, but the exposition dump that followed, revealing that Prismo literally created their whole universe in the first place, more than justified that development. In my review of the first episode, Fiona Campbell, I had correctly predicted that Fiona's world is the exact same one from the Fiona and Cake episodes of the original series, but without magic due to Gold Betty resetting an ice ground. With that being confirmed, I'm now curious if the Betty statue is a manifestation of what's blocking Prismo from accessing Ice King's head. Maybe if Fiona and Cake actually go back to the original universe, one of their tasks will have to be to destroy the Betty fountain. Prismo is also the one who outfits Simon in that classic blue moo-moo. Although this time Simon has to go commando, creating the potential for much nudity-based humor. I feel like had Simon just asked for underwear, though, Prismo would have totally obliged. To be fair to Simon, he spends most of the episode trying to drown out the madness and sadness, so I gotta cut him a break for not asking for undies. Prismo verbally explains so much in this episode. I am actually pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed Prismo's lore dump. Normally, a character spouting so much exposition in an episode would feel on the dull side, but the characters all have a great chemistry and the characters' jokes and flashbacks really helped Prismo's explanations stay captivating.
Hey, Ice King, can I store a fan-made alternate universe in your Crystome?
So, Magic Flashlight, you can put anything you want in there.
It was nice of Prismo to get consent in this arrangement, but it was definitely not informed consent. Then again, getting informed consent from Ice King sounds like a pretty tall order. I really liked the reveal that Prismo wanted to make a world not spurred on by the wish of another, but a world made purely for the sake of creation on his own behalf.
After eons of making stuff for others, I wondered what it would be like to make something for myself.
It made me think back to the episode Horse and Ball, where James Baxter had to discover how to create art for his own sake to find fulfillment. I adored Prismo's slight smile when Fiona and Cake take delight at the prospect of being outside the rules.
You're like free radicals.
Awesome.
That sounds cool.
This was Prismo vicariously experiencing the same emotions that drove him to create Fiona and Cake's world in the first place, and now his own creations are beaming at the prospect of the very same thing Prismo himself desires, to have freedom.
They're Fiona and Cake, and they go where they want.
Prismo's smile was a brief but really captivating moment for me. I love subtle character work like that, especially when it plays into a decision a character makes later, like it did with Prismo. Obviously, the problem with Prismo's own wishes is that Prismo's role as Wishmaster restricts him from expressing himself in such a way.
My boss is gonna drop the hammer.
Your boss?
Prismo's boss is being teased yet again, and if there was ever a time for revealing a character, I would hope it would be during this miniseries. I'm gonna be a bit bummed if we still don't get an on-screen appearance by the end of Fiona and Cake, despite Prismo's boss having so much emphasis placed on them, both in this episode and back during the Season 7 episode crossover.
Now, if that happens, my boss, let me repeat that. My boss overrules me with that practice. Y'all both will be in the gym too.
Now, to talk about Fiona a bit, she's characteristically disappointed to get no cool powers at all, but literally a cosplay outfit that she's not even a fan of, though thereby short selling practicality. I'm a big fan of practicality. I am digging the shorts. I'm quite interested in how Fiona is going to approach the different dimensions in the future. Early into this episode, she had said,
It's like a video game and we're getting upgrades for beating those weirdos.
Even in her own non-magical world, Fiona resorts to brawn very quickly. But I'm curious if she's gonna keep on beating up random people now that she's informed about all these realities being, well, fully real, or if she's gonna adopt a more measured approach with how she interacts with denizens from foreign worlds. Now, Simon's behavior in this episode was hilarious. I love the so much. When Prismo confronts him, Simon acts like a petulant child.
Do anything. Right.
And I am here for that petty bratness from the saddled man.
Whatever. Dude.
Simon also spends the whole episode chugging beers non-stop. Dude sees free alcohol and just begins going to town to dull his sorrows. Makes me a tad worried about just how often he visits Dirt Beer Guy's bar and the potential for alcoholism. I'll give him a pass for binge drinking this one time, because the Fiona and Cake situation really is a clusterfuck. While Ice King may have agreed to a universe stored in his head as if his noggin was a hard drive, Simon certainly did not. Fiona and Cake also get on Simon's case about how Ice King was better than him and how he lived happier. That was seriously fucked up.
It wasn't fun. It was insane.
I don't know. They look pretty happy.
I really do apologize once they understand better what Simon has been through. I did not expect Simon to just give up and choose incineration toward the end of the episode, though.
What's the point?
It was a brief moment of alcohol-fueled apathy before Fiona asked Simon to consider the repercussions to her world and all the people in it. But it was a really dark moment. When you consider that Simon was thinking of ending things, his decision to become Ice King at the end of the episode in order to help others isn't out of left field, as it might seem. So, while Simon's antics were extremely funny, his character development so far has been simultaneously extremely sad. Leave it to Adventure Time to pull off that balancing act with so much finesse. To lighten the mood a bit, how about the gonzo source of where time comes from across the multiverse? It's from two titans bashing each other. Seems like Steve Wolfhard came up with these awesome fellas.
The colors give me a headache.
The Clock Titan has a crack, and I'm curious what that's about, if anything. Leave a comment if you have any thoughts. I really hope these are Chekhov's Titans, so to say. I would be disappointed if they end up merely as window decor to make travel through the time room more visually interesting. That being said, even if they aren't used in this series, I could see them making a return if Adventure Time gets more revelations. After all, the creators planted Prismo beaming Fiona and Cake into Ice King's head in the episode Fiona and Cake and Fiona when, at the time, there was no way to actually deliver the payoff to that plotline. That's wild, but time will tell if the Time Titans will be messed with. Based on the introduction sequence to Fiona and Cake, I'd infer that they probably will be. The episode nears its conclusion with Scrabby blasting apart the wall Prismo was holding back, and Prismo should hopefully be fine, but he'll likely be detained for most of the series from this point forward, I would figure. I'm curious if the solution Prismo came up with right before being blasted was for Fiona or Cake to make a lift of some sort. That seems like an obvious option that nobody considered for whatever reason. And then yes, the episode ends with Simon deciding that he needs to become Ice King again for everything to get solved. And I'm gonna delay all the concept until I see the next few episodes. The one potential concern I have at this point in the Fiona and Cake series is whether Scarab will be able to mutate out of being a two-dimensional villain. All the new antagonists in the Distant Land specials were pretty much two-dimensional, but the focus wasn't on the villains, so it wasn't a problem for most of the specials. Fiona and Cake doesn't seem to be focusing on the villain much either, but it's also 5 times the duration of a Distant Land special, and I feel like a flat one-note villain in a series of this length would damper the overall experience somewhat. I mean, the Stakes miniseries was less than half the length of Fiona and Cake, and it definitely pulled off having highly compelling antagonists, especially with the Vampire King being the head honcho. Now, Now, so far, Scrappy has been fine. It's only been a single episode, but he's not striking me as someone with much room for development or dynamic and layered interactions with others. I hope there's more beneath the surface to flesh out there, beyond him being merely the reason Fiona and Kate and Simon have to keep hopping through different dimensions. After Distant Lands, I would really just like a well-rounded antagonist. Ultimately, I found this episode to be a fantastical experience, and I loved every minute of it. I think episode 2 still edges this episode out by a little bit for me. I think Finn and Simon camping just puts it over the top, but it's really close between the two. I hope the richness of exploring these characters' psyches continues, and I'm eager to see what comes next now that Simon is making more rash decisions. The next 2 episodes are coming out really soon, and I hope you'll keep tuning in for my reviews. See ya! Between Season 5, Episode 2, Jake the Dog, and Season 7, Episode 23, Crossover, Farmworld Flynn was under the influence of the Ice Crown and using its snowy powers non-stop. He literally pulled open the episode Destiny, showcases Iceman capturing a family during this time of madness, when he was referred to as the Snowman by those yet to be caught. As seen in Crossover, Iceman was abducting humans for the purpose of constructing a mountain fortress from stacks of frozen bodies to perform a ritual at the behest of the Lich in the guise of Jake. Basically, the episode Crossover serves as a prologue to the episode Destiny, and if you haven't seen Crossover in a while, it's probably time for a rewatch. The state of Farmworld Finn's mind in Destiny really needs the context of Crossover to fully appreciate it.
I don't truck with magic. You know that.
Farmworld Finn is free of the Ice Crown's control due to Prismo's interference at the behest of Prime Finn, but the memories he has of being Ice Finn more than 12 years ago still haunt his mind even now. The landscape itself is haunted by the legacy of Ice Finn, and I really love this aspect of the current Farmworld universe and how all the denizens view it as this era-defining event.
Everybody knows there's been no magic since the days of the snowman.
This is where I felt the episode had a bit of a missed opportunity though, because had Finn opened up to Simon, there was potential to discuss just how wretched the influence of the Ice Crown feels, and Simon could reflect on how the people of Farmworld all feared the so-called snowman. That being said, Rugged Finn is an extremely withdrawn and distrustful character, and it seems like he only opens up to his family, and even then he kept the Ice Crown a secret until he got too drunk on accident.
Dad doesn't speak of it. One time, he drank cider that got hard, and got separated out.
Given those aspects, it makes total sense that a conversation about the Ice Crown never took place between the two, but it still felt like a missed opportunity to give Simon more food for thought about his decision to become Ice King again. Something that left an itch in the back of my mind regarding Farmworld is its lack of magic. The Maid removed the Lich from the Farmworld universe, meaning that the Lich did not spread mutagenic horror across the world, and currently Farmworld remains non-magical and mutant-free more than a decade later, even at ground zero of the mutagenic bomb's explosion. This might imply that the Lich's presence was key for Prime Land of Oo to become magical in the aftermath of the apocalypse, which is a curious thought. Jumping back to the start of the episode, the jokes were firing on all cylinders. Cake playing Snake on an old-timey cell phone brought back some memories of when I would do the very same thing as a child, and I laughed so hard at Cake bringing Fiona a bloody rodent.
You love it. You love this.
But the idea that Simon just fiddled with the remote and let Fiona drench in the carcass's juices while she slept? That was even funnier. I've also really been digging all the outfit changes our characters undergo.
Don't make it weird.
Kate keeps on making it weird, of course, when she ships alternate universe versions of people with each other.
Yeah, you two should kiss.
Kiss each other!
Jake the dog was into shipping real-life folks too. It's a problematic character trait both versions share. So, the Farmworld universe got even more rad and ruthless over the years as the Destiny game spread its influence. Well, what for me is mad rad feel any stress. But hey, at least they're doing it to cook alligators rather than to purge literature and information. All the background characters were beyond fun in this Mad Max-like world, and my eyes were constantly darting to various parts of the screen as our central cast wanders through the town. Fiona and I were basically on the exact same wavelength. I especially loved the various sorts of fashion. Folks in the human city of Ooh don't really resonate with me on the fashion front, but my eyes get sparkly when things like skulls are incorporated onto clothing. Some of my personal favorite background characters include the Dirt Robber, because this person who wears belts as if they were a Guilty Gear character and has a flail attached to a giant thread spool, because that's just so funny to me as a visual. And then this person with enormous skulls for shoulder pads and a globe on their head. True story time. As a kid, I actually tried to make a globe hat by gluing a globe to a cap. It failed spectacularly, and I couldn't even get the center of gravity to work out. Congrats to this fictional person for actually figuring out how to make the globe stay balanced and attached to your head. They're out there living my childhood dreams. The weirdest character for me was that chicken boy. That's like a Mr. Tusk situation, but with a chicken from the look of things, and I want nothing to do with that. This is another world in which Fiona behaves like alternate universes are just a video game.
Relax, dude. I've played a lot of post-apocalyptic RPGs. The more loot, the better. You gotta punch and push your way around to get what you want. Hey, you!
And Kate behaves pretty similarly, for that matter. You crook!
Woo, Kate!
I really appreciate how so much care was given to Cake still not knowing all the ins and outs of her brand new stretchy powers. The gag towards the end of the episode where the Destiny game uses Cake's own arms to tie up our crew had me burst out laughing. Cake using her powers are what leads to a series of events that end with a character named Jay saving the gang and bringing them to his dad, the rugged Finn who sometimes wears a hat atop his hat. Because he just can't guess. Jay's age bugged me for a while after I watched this episode, because he struck me closer to like 13 or 14 based off his height and behavior, but that would not fit into the 12-year time skip, and Finn being 29 years old. Jay has to basically be around 11 years old at most, and even then, Finn would have had to be a teenage dad when Jay was conceived. This actually led to a grandpa being deeper in my brain, but Jay is actually far more Finn's baby brother, and Finn raised Jay as his own son after their parents died in some tragedy shortly after the episode crossover, which is why we don't see or hear about the rest of Finn's family during this episode. I don't actually subscribe to that idea, but I wanted to share it with y'all after it clogged up mental real estate in my brain, because I had a hard time seeing Jay as an 11-year-old. A theory that holds actual, legit credibility is that the Farmworld version of Huntress Wizard was Finn's partner, who is currently deceased. Finn has 5 kids, though not all of them get speaking roles and only 2 of them get names, and all of those kids but 1 are blonde. That one kid has red hair and green eyes, and he looks very similar to a young version of Hunter from Fiona and Cake's non-magical universe, so that's some pretty hard evidence of Huntress Wizard's lineage. Some softer evidence that Farmworld Huntress Wizard was the mom is that the perpetual stew which has been going since she died is also known as Hunter's Pot or Hunter's Stew. This feels as close to canonical as one can get without outright confirming who the character was. As a side note, seems like Finn is destined to name his kids after Jake and Princess Bubblegum in multiple worlds, as those were the same names his pillow kids had in the episode Puhoy. That was a nice little touch of continuity across universes, though I am also left curious as to the names of Finn's other 3 kids. At the climax of the episode, Finn's entrance to save the day in his poncho while riding Barbar that stayed perfectly stiff was hilarious. Made me think of the deer named Alan Dracula from Infinity Train. Finn's battle was brief but bombastic, and we got our first cutaway from depicting on-screen violence when he sets a Destiny gang member ablaze with his flamethrower prosthetic arm. I am a huge fan of the ending and how much intensity it packed. Showing Finn get his head stomped into the ground is certainly a way to depict the ferocity of the new villain. I was really digging Scarab's face, by the way. It made me think of an arthropod head that was dissected open and pulled apart or something. Now, whether Finn biffed it and took a lethal hit to the cranium, or whether he'll be fine, is left completely up to the viewer. It was so ambiguous, and I loved that lack of clarity. I certainly did come away at first, though, thinking that Finn got murked.
I always figured I'd go out saving somebody.
Which would make Fiona, Cake, and Simon arriving in this world such a massive tragedy, because it caused a sequence of events that spiraled into a family losing their remaining guardian. I do empathize with all those folks, though, who don't want that sadness in their headcanons, and prefer to view Finn as having survived the hit. The episode Destiny provided a radical return to the Farm World universe, and I was enthralled from start to finish. Although Fiona and Simon don't really have much character development occur this time around, I think the trade-off was worth it to get such a rich snapshot of how Farm World has both changed and remained the same over the years. The first half of the Fiona and Cake series has been an absolute blast, though I am hoping that Fiona and Simon's character arcs kick into gear in episodes 7 and 8, because these alternate universes have really been stealing the limelight. Universes like the Winter Kings, which I will be discussing in the next video. When Fiona blushed at the Winter King, I said, ah, jeez. When Fiona kissed the Winter King, I said, oh no. And when the Winter King's ice crown was drained of all its magic from Fiona's heightened emotional state and alternate Simon became a corpse, I exclaimed, failure! That is my sort of fictional infatuation, the kind that ends with someone decaying into a husk. And then, after Fiona blushed from Princess Bubblegum's kiss on the cheek, I chuckled at the bisexuality of the moment. Wow, what an episode. Gotta give massive props to Princess Bubblegum / Candy Queen's voice actor, Hynden Walsh. Killed it!
Baby, why you gotta be like that?
What a twist on the familiar Bonnabelle voice we're all accustomed to. How many songs has Phoebe had again? That Goldie but affectionate Lemon Hope song and some brief singing when she was an elementally overcharged giant wad of gum? Now I am thinking that Bonnabelle could have had a great type of performance in the episode musical or something, because wow, this musical number titled Good Love is gonna be stuck in my head for a while.
Just like cake needs eyes if you look.
While the Candy Queen's lyrics were
Not a metaphor.
the ice prince of Fiona's dreams very much was, but Fiona mistakes the figurative for the literal.
This is going to sound nuts, but I think I've been dreaming.
The Winter King, the character of the episode, was so very extra. His behavior gave me vibes of Patient St. Ellen, but smoothed over with like Adderall or something. To me, the Winter King immediately set off my I don't trust this guy signal, despite his zany friendliness and the amazing visual aesthetic during his musical number. A functional variant of the Ice King, like stuff just doesn't register as correct in my brain, so something sinister just had to be at play with this guy. While watching the episode, my first hypothesis as to what the twist might have been was that the Winter King had covered the entire land of Ooo in ice and was somehow harnessing magic across the land to counteract the insanity of the ice river. Basically, I thought the Winter King might have been using everything outside his central kingdom as a magical battery to keep the ground in check while freezing the world in stasis. That idea, of course, went out the window when the Candy Queen arrived, and at that point, I wondered, is this a universe where the crowns are switched, and the Winter King was actually the princess of the Ice Kingdom, and also the Ice Elemental, while Princess Bubblegum wore born the first seducing crown that was associated with Jacksberry in this universe rather than with Evergreen. I thought that was like such an awesome idea, but it already didn't make sense at the time, because the Winter King had shown that he could not use his powers without wearing the crown.
Gives up.
And once I realized that, my mind just eventually stopped trying to guess what the twist was. While the deadpan jokes that delivered the twist were pretty comical, I would have liked to see a flashback to alternate Ice King actually conducting the curse that transferred his madness to Princess Bubblegum and allowed him to become the Winter King 100 years ago, and that was mostly